I'm going to talk about the structure within RGA that brings these two cultures together at the service of our clients, right? We call it the whole idea. So if you go back to these two worlds that I was talking about, of storytelling and systematic design, one way to think about it is to think about this tension between simplicity and possibility. What I know about great storytellers, great sort of brand narrative creatives, is that they're subtractive thinkers. There's something about storytelling that forces you to subtract because it's about the revealed moment. A story is as good as the next revealed moment. You're waiting for that moment, right? It's temporal. Whereas systematic thinkers are very good at possibility because what they see is combinations. What systematic thinkers are really great at is taking two things that seem unrelated and put them together to make a third thing. Great systematic thinkers think architecturally, they think in sort of patterns, and what they do is that they create possibility by recombining things that exist into new things. That's just the nature of how they think. So if you put these two ways of thinking together, then what you're trying to do is balance simplicity and possibility. If I look at the 17 offices that we have around the world, and I see that one office is doing great storytelling but not innovating, then I think, oh, we need more systematic thinkers. We need a better balance. If I see one of our offices that are good at innovating but they can't tell a simple brand story, we've got too many systematic thinkers. So these things sort of work together in a way. Our model for creative leadership is not art and copy, it's stories and systems. And in New York, Taras Weiner is a classic copywriter, and Chloe Gottlieb is an experience designer. Stories and systems, right? That's how they work together. And so together, they work better, right, than apart. This is not about getting coverage across digital stuff and traditional stuff. It's about understanding that Taras, as a writer, is better when he's working with a systematic thinker because he writes thinking about a behavior. He gets out of those tropes of advertising, like metaphors and all these things that are meant to make you feel something, but don't instruct you on anything. And he starts thinking about, how do I lead people to a behavior? Because Chloe's designing behaviors. And Chloe, as a designer of behaviors, thinks more about how does this interface ladder up to a brand idea, right? Because that's what Taras is good at. So you have this nice symbiosis between these two ways of thinking, which are very similar to the two hemispheres of the brain being lateralized. So that's our model, right? And how that works in practice, right, is that you go from a world, right, where an agency has a client has something to say, and the agency pushes it down into the world, right? And you combine it with this new world, which is you design a behavior from the bottom up, right? And it's the sort of tension between a message and a behavior. It's what a brand says and what a brand does, right? Because when you design or create a system of behavior from the bottom up, you're inviting people in to do something through an interface with your brand, right? But typically what happens right now is clients will have an agency for doing the top down and an agency for doing the bottom up, and there'll be a gap between those two things. And there'll be a sort of incoherence. There'll be a traditional agency saying it's really important you figure out what you say to your consumers. Don't worry about all the other stuff. And they'll have a digital agency saying, screw that. You want to be useful. And the problem is that most of the sort of organizing creative ideas around brands are top-down. They start from top-down. Traditionally, they've been top-down. They're about, what have I got to say? And the thing you need to understand about social is it's not just this top-down thing. It's not about a company deciding what it wants to say. And now in the case of Straight Outta Compton, it hit this perfect sweet spot where it was giving the audience the ability to say something better than they could say themselves. So aligning what a brand wants to say with what people want to say means that you can get these enormous network effects, right? And it's very different. It's bottom-up thinking. It's like, how does this system work? How does a system that is not one-directional, right, which is multi-directional, behave? It behaves like a system. It has feedback loops. You know, it has network effects and all these things that when you're thinking about a campaign, you think systematically. And then you put that campaign into this system and you encourage certain behaviors so that you get this sort of success.